Welcome to Safe Doesn't Scale. I'm your host, David Walsh, founder of Limelight. This show is for marketing and growth leaders with a chip on their shoulder who are tired of playing it safe. I am so excited to have Niall Ratcliffe on the pod today. Niall has 58,000 followers on LinkedIn. He is a LinkedIn guru. I've been following your journey for a while, so really appreciate you coming on and spending some time with me.
Yeah, super excited. I know we were chatting a little bit beforehand, but I think there's a bunch to talk about here. So yeah, super excited.
Awesome. Well, maybe just to kick things off, Safe Doesn't Scale is all about marketing and growth leaders and doing things differently on the marketing side. You've had a really interesting journey. Why don't we start with what do you do today and what's the service that you guys are offering at Notice?
Yeah, so we're primarily a B2B marketing agency, but our specialism is LinkedIn. We do our own system for that. It generally is a mix of content and outreach as well. And we say that all our activities that we try and activate upon for clients are all starting conversations. So getting the DMs, drumming up leads, new business, but also making sure they have the brand awareness of the content as well. We do a lot of exec branding and company branding across LinkedIn as well, which is super exciting.
That's amazing. I feel like you came to this industry way earlier than most people, right? I feel like LinkedIn has woken up and people are realizing, okay, I need to create an audience. I need to create a following. LinkedIn can drive revenue. You've been doing this for years. So I feel like the people that are listening to this are going to be really interested in this conversation. Why don't we kick it off, like just broadly speaking, B2B marketing? What is not working today in your mind?
It's a great question. You know, the other week I was talking at an event. I was at B2B Marketing Live, and I was about to go on stage, and I had like 30, 45 minutes to kill beforehand. So I was wandering around the booths, and someone had seen me on LinkedIn. They came up and they said hi, and they mentioned that I just in a campaign my granddad was in it, which sounded like a good conversation started and a bad one at the same time. But they were chatting about, oh yeah, we're at this booth, and I was like, oh cool. I was like, curiously, out of curiosity, how much did the booth cost here? I think it was something like £19,000 they paid for this booth. I was kind of a little bit shocked, and I kind of like didn't want to say it to him at the time. So I was like, "Oh, that's great. Yeah, I'll see you at your booth later." And I brushed it off. And then afterwards, I got this like manual from the event, after I'd spoken, and they had all these booth prices, and that wasn't even the cheap, most expensive booth. Like the booth prices were going up and up and up. And for this like central booth, I think it was something like £50,000.
Wow.
And I was literally thinking while I was there, I was like, at the event, there might have been 2,000-3,000 attendees, let's say, maybe 4,000 if we're really pushing it. And I was thinking, out of this room, like the spend that people have spent to get in front of 4,000 people is like hundreds of thousands across all these people. And I thought it was so ironic that people will pay 40,000, 20,000 to get in front of a room of 4,000 possible decision makers, when actually LinkedIn has like 61 million decision makers. And I've never spent £4,000 on LinkedIn. We do about $1 million a year in sales on LinkedIn. I've never spent anywhere close to that. And so I think what's not working in B2B is just like going down the traditional methods of getting in front of people. So like spending thousands for a booth, paying for an ad in a industry magazine. Like to probably 50% of people listening to this, it will be like, well, obviously that's outdated. But people don't understand that like 80% of the market have their whole marketing strategy is about like being in industry magazines and like getting booths at events. Like these events are still thriving. People are paying hundreds of thousands every year to be at booths, which is just absolutely bonkers to me. And that's for me what's not working. Like you're using traditional methods to get in front of people.
It's such a good point. You know, I've gone to a few conferences and sometimes they're a hit, right? They're buzzing and they're busy and the floor is packed and, you know, it's an exciting atmosphere to be in. But when you're spending $20,000 and only a couple of thousand people have come to the event and it's not getting the amount of traction or footfall, you end up wondering, is this worth the investment? Now, I will say now, the only benefit of that is you can take really good content. Like you can go to a booth. Now you don't need to, I suppose you don't need to buy a booth to create great content, but being in front of those users is kind of or being in front of those prospects and those people and having face-to-face interactions is always beneficial. Basically what you're saying is you can do it way more cost effectively, put yourself out there, create great content, and there's no looking back.
David, on the most basic level, if you give me $20,000, I could hire, let's estimate, if I went to overseas hires and I was paying top dollar for sales reps in the DMs, and I haven't done this, I'm guesstimating here, I think I could have 20 people starting 100 plus conversations a day across even any channel, but let's say just LinkedIn. I guarantee I would have dramatically more calls booked, spending 20,000, or getting 20 people and paying them £1,000 a month, £1,000 for 1 month to spend all month starting conversations. I'm not saying that's a great method everyone should use. It's just like when people break it down to the basics, it's like I said, like I'm always thinking, how am I optimizing for the most conversations I'm starting with RICP? And it's like if there's 4,000 people at a conference, you have the best sales reps on your booth, and you scan the QR code at the booth nowadays. It's like
Yeah.
you come away with 100. That's a really good day, and
Right.
that's 100 people who've been like, and I'm getting like a caricature drone while someone's trying to pitch me on his product. Do you know what I mean? Because everyone has these like little activations in their booth. Yeah, it's crazy to me. I think, like I said, I think it's amazing, and it doesn't. I'm not saying that you can't get an ROI from it. People will go to a booth and get an ROI. That's great. They have massive average order values. I'm just saying, like, a very basic marketing strategy optimized for conversations with $20,000, you would get a lot further with other things.
Here's the thing, and I'm going to say something bold. We work with the likes of Webflow, HubSpot, Bill.com, ZoomInfo, all the way down to early stage startup companies. And there comes a point in a marketeer's career or position where they're under pressure to deliver results with the same budget or a reduced budget. And the truth is, they're lazy. They're lazy. They just end up going back to traditional methods because one, it's easier and more convenient, and two, they can just point their finger and say, hey, that didn't work. Well, now in the age of AI and how fast things are moving, I think standing out for the crowd is more important than ever. You have to do things that are non-traditional, and you have to be willing to test and make mistakes. I think too many marketeers take a position of like, we need to be conservative, we need to make sure that we deliver results, we don't have experimental budget, I'm under pressure. Well, the truth is you have to experiment in today's world. You have to do things differently. Okay, we've got so much to talk about. Where do we want to start? I think let's start with your journey on LinkedIn. Why did you start creating content? When did you start creating content? Let's start there.
Before the podcast started, we mentioned that one of my first jobs ever was at Kurogo. And I always say it was an unusual start to my marketing career because Kurogo is a company that doesn't market companies, they market people. And I was employee number 3 there. And when I was there, we were doing full scope for everyone's personal brand. So we were running like an Instagram, Twitter, TikTok if they wanted it, LinkedIn, PR, virtually anything that these guys wanted. And very quickly, I remember there was this one guy who had a startup in the music niche. It was like a music dating app. I can't remember the name of it now. And he raised something like 8 figures, like virtually in his LinkedIn DMs. Like he was
Wow.
going back and forth in his LinkedIn DMs. And I was sat there, I was about 19 at the time. And I remember just thinking, like, everyone's kind of talking about TikTok over here or like Instagram Reels. And I was like, I think people are making massive amounts of money on LinkedIn. And we were sat there very early to the game back then, running these people's personal brands. And I was watching entrepreneurs do 7-figure deals in the DMs, like I said, 8-figure raise in the DMs. And I was like, Jesus Christ, there's an opportunity here on LinkedIn. And the reason it ended up happening in terms of the company wise was someone literally reached out to me and offered me virtually my full-time salary just to work with them as a client. And it was like, as Matthew McConaughey says, it was like green light after green light. Like I was just seeing like, wow, these people are raising money on LinkedIn, they're making money on LinkedIn. Now someone's paying me my full-time salary just to help them on LinkedIn. And very quickly, I always tell this story. I actually posted on LinkedIn, said, I've quit my job, I'm going to do this. And within 11 days, we hit a 6-figure run rate, which is like, for who I was
Wow.
at the time. I was, 2021, no experience, no like, real world experience, hadn't worked at Goldman Sachs, I had no this big credibility behind me. And it was just like green light after green light that there's clearly demand for this. And we were just very lucky to have a skill set there at that time. And I was kind of on the first lines of understanding what was happening on LinkedIn, but not many people were talking about it.
Well, LinkedIn has changed so much. Even since I've started creating content 2 years ago, it's evolved, and we can get into what's working today later in the conversation. I want to translate this into B2B marketing leaders. They're listening to this call. They're wondering, how do I get started? What should I be doing? And I think employee advocacy is a great starting off point. And what does employee advocacy mean? It means activating your internal subject matter experts to create content and become a voice at the company, and then use that as a marketing channel. Even transitioning some of that organic content into paid ads can also be very effective. So I want to ask you, how do you think about employee advocacy, and how do you get employees or team members who don't create content on a regular basis or haven't done it before? How do you get them started? How do you get them creating great content? And how do you make them be consistent?
I love this question. So we did about 17 million impressions last year on LinkedIn through our employees' content. And we
Wow.
don't have a massive team. We peaked at I think 22 team members last year. And we did 17 million impressions, no paid, all organic. And the way we do it for me, there's 3 things. The first one is an incentive structure. So we literally incentivize based on followers. We felt like that was the best because it was incremental versus like some people might have 1 million impressions one month, they might not the next. So we do
Tell
growth.
me how that works exactly, because that's really
Literally,
interesting.
literally, it's like 1,000 followers, you get an Audible voucher. 1,500 followers, you might get a meal out. And it all scales up to, I think, 10,000 followers, you get a night away for you and a partner. And it's like 20,000 followers, it's like a weekend away, and we pay for it. And I think like total cost, technically speaking, maybe we spent 2,500 quid on like rewards. And my favorite thing about spending 2,500 quid, it's not like I spent 2,500 quid on into an ads platform that disappeared. It's like I spent 2,500 quid treating our team members. Like it's a win-win incentive structure. Like I like giving them rewards, and in return, they obviously promote us on LinkedIn.
Hold on. I am so excited because you know what? I started this podcast selfishly because I thought the conversations I was having in sales calls and prospect calls and customer calls were so interesting. What I realized in interviewing people is that I actually learned my own strategy and I start to steal ideas. That is genius. If anyone is listening to this call, and I speak with marketing leaders all the time, they're trying to think about employee advocacy. They're like, what's the one thing they say? Is they always say, like, oh, we tried it. It's kind of a flop. Nobody really cares. There's no incentive. Well, I think number one, you have to start from the top, right? Somebody has to be driving this at the executive level to
Yeah.
be looking up to. You can't just expect the team below and the junior level employees to care if the leader isn't doing it. But let's say you've got a good leader and you've activated them. You're saying actually incentives with rewards? That is fascinating. Anyone listening to this, copy that immediately. I'm going to
Yeah.
copy it internally. I think that's awesome. Anything else come to mind around employee
There's two,
advocacy?
these two other things we do is championing success. So we shout out team wins on content on all hands calls on a Friday, like with a client win. So it's like this client just signed this deal, and also this team member had a viral post. So this team member got 100 likes. So this team member hit 1,000 followers. And we make sure that like if there's a team member posting that might not even be flying, we'll make sure to shout them out for something. Like just want to shout out, Sid on this call, busted 5 killing great post this week. Like people will be shocked how much like just championing success impacts on the call. And then the
Love that.
third thing, David, is resources. It's like you've got to understand, and this is what people miss when we talk about employee generated content or employee advocacy. It's like it takes time to create content. So you need to reduce the friction between them doing their job and posting content on the side as much as you can. The way we do this is we have like a best post archive for inspiration, so you can go through, find great posts. And the second thing is like templates. It's like hook templates, post templates that they can go through if they're struggling and get it. And then the third thing is just like we have like a full archive of like old videos I recorded, videos we do from team meetings, training. So if they are interested in it, they have that there. And then like because of those things, we also have now like a culture of people posting content. It's like in other companies where you have this like cringe factor of like, oh, Billy's posting content. Like it doesn't become that because like you only need one or two to break out and get the rewards to do that. And by the way, we tried everything. I think it's really worth noting. We once tried to pay all our team for posting on LinkedIn. So we offered them something along the lines of like, it was like £5 for every consistent day they posted on LinkedIn. And we were like, let's just try it. And like, truthfully, like from a scale perspective, it just didn't make sense. And it was like at the time we were only a small team.
Let me ask you another question. So that's
Go
really
on.
interesting. Like I think like employee advocacy is something that a lot of companies struggle with. And I just love the idea of making this like tiered reward system, like milestones. That's awesome. And then once you get it going, it becomes this like culture and this like community and this like close knit, you start to share ideas and thoughts and see each other's work, which is awesome. So it creates this kind of cohesive team environment, which I love. And that can happen at big companies, by the way. Like I'm working with Webflow and they're trying to get their employee team to do this. There end up being like little smaller communities within the company that are then the creators. The goal is what I hear from you directly is like you need to shout it out. It can't just live in a box and stand on its own if you're not calling it out to the rest of the team and their whole company. And maybe even incentivizing it with like, how do we track the revenue from this? Like I'm always fascinated of like, how do we actually track the impact on pipeline and revenue from this organic content? I would love your take on this. And then we're going to come to great content and how to write it. But how do you actually track the impact that LinkedIn can have on revenue at your business today?
Do you know, this is the really tough thing, right? Because everyone wants like a quantitative number. So they want to see like, oh, Katie's posting 3 times a week. She's drove $6 grand deal, and Rob's posted 4 times a week, and he's just like, it's very tough, if not impossible, to like track that. We do like, it's ironic, right? We have a 20% referral fee for every team member who brings a deal in, which is like can be massive sums for them. I think we've had one in our entire history. It's like I think people start this employee advocacy journey and think that they're going to get inbound leads into each team member, but you have to see it as like distribution at scale. Like we're a very small agency still, like under 25 staff, right? But we have this much bigger pull for like the Manchester market in particular, and then like the UK market. And it's like you have to look at the qualitative numbers as like, are your sales team, when people jump on calls, do they know the brand? When you're hiring for people, do they seem to know the brand now? And it's like, it's very tough for someone like a Webflow to get that traction. But like the qualitative metric I would track, and we have a much smaller sales team, so like it might be different for a Webflow or a large B2B brand, but I would like include it in a sales call question. Or just a quick one before we jump off. Like, where do you see us most? Or like, why did you come across us? and just like have
Mm,
that question. And I think they'd be shocked if you start tracking that in HubSpot, how many people did come through LinkedIn. And
right.
you have to have this common sense knowledge to be like, if two of my team members or 20 of my team members are posting on LinkedIn, like, yeah, I'm not going to attribute that sale to the LinkedIn company page that's getting 40 likes. Like, I'm going to attribute that to the tactic that we've had over the last quarter to get our team posting. And it is like employee advocacy is not like a even like a 3 month trial. This is like a 6 month, 12-month trial. Like, try
You've got to
like
commit to it to the long term for
get
sure.
it, and then
I
like,
definitely agree.
and if you can't, and like, while a lot of B2B leaders will hate me for this, like if you can't feel the impact, that's what you should be looking for. Like there's such a thing in marketing that everything has to be attributed and you have to have a number behind it because you have to go and show the board. And ironically, you're not working towards like the top level company's incentives when you do that. Like the company wants growth. And sometimes that isn't through tracking every number. And sometimes it's like a CMO, whatever your title is. Like you just got to know, like, do you feel it? You're at a conference where people are talking about you. I feel our employees' presence everywhere I go. When I do talent and interviews, when I do sales calls, when we go to events, like you can feel it. And while that's
Mm.
not the great answer that a lot of CMOs want, that is the reality, I think.
I was on with an agency owner who does paid ads and outbound for like hundreds of companies only on Friday last week. So very recently. And I was asking him this same question. You know what he said was so interesting? He said, my employees have started to create so much content that now people come through our pipeline and I request a call and a conversation and then request an employee to
That's
work
very
with
cool.
because they've
Yeah.
seen the content. And so when you think about content, you think about it at the beginning, it's like, oh, I need to brand awareness, I need top of funnel. But actually, it's like it nurtures the deal, right? If they start to
Mm.
follow your content, they start to realize that you're not like pestering them in their email inbox saying, are you going to sign this contract or not? You know, deadlines tomorrow. They're seeing the content of you being a subject matter expert. So they start to follow your team. And what I think is really interesting with employee advocacy, in that scenario at least, the prospects were requesting an individual at the company to work with because they got to learn and know about them. Let's transition it a little bit. So I think like bad content in B2B, you know, you're working with some, you know, bigger companies, let's say, and you're trying to help their executive team create content. Where do you see content fall flat? What are the mistakes that marketers make when they
Mm.
try activate employees and get content flowing? Like, what are the mistakes that are made of content? What are like the things you cannot do that you see all the time?
I think this is a controversial one, David. I think there's two different types of content that I can talk about. The first one is like, if I'm a creator, what's good or bad content? Well, I can talk about how bad content is using like a corporate tone and not using human faces and that kind of thing. But how I actually think about it from like a B2B perspective is like, I post content to drive revenue into our business. That's my number one goal. My LinkedIn is a marketing channel. Like, forget my personal brand, forget the future. Like right now, my only goal, my personal brand is to drive more revenue into my business. So I see my content as fishing. Like I want to put out content that has high utility, that's around my niche, that essentially can be an intent trigger if someone engages on it. So I had a post in 2024. It was a story about my life. How I went from having no money to starting a business. Got 2.8 million impressions. We got zero leads through that, like zero inbound, zero anything. But also, like one of the biggest things that we drive revenue through LinkedIn is like our sales team going through all the intent triggers we can get into. But like
Mm,
I've got 2.8 million impressions, 3,600 people like the post. Our sales team can't go through those engagers and be like, oh yeah, they're high intent leads that we need to reach out to. But if I have a post that gets 60 likes that's on how to master LinkedIn outreach in 2026, like I can have someone get that list in through a tool like Triggerfy, whatever tool you want to use, and literally be like, all 60 of those are curious about LinkedIn outreach. So whether it's they can send them an automated message, whether they want to like hit the phone in a more traditional method and call them and just say, hi, I saw you engaged on one of our team's posts about LinkedIn outreach. Is that something you're chatting about internally? Like that's how you start
mm.
conversations. And my content from that perspective is fishing. Like I'm putting the fishing word out there. So what's bad content for me is when companies and B2B companies think about content as if they're creators and not for the actual intention. If your intention is just brand awareness, that's a different thing we're talking about. But if you're saying, I want to do the employee advocacy, I want to put out content on LinkedIn to drive sales and revenue into my business, like you're going fishing. And to go
Right.
fishing, you have to make sure that the content you're putting out, when people engage on it, that is a signal of intent and not just um, liking the
Yeah.
post because they like you.
Well, I can speak from my experience. Like when I started creating content 2 years ago, I initially defaulted to what I think everyone does, which is sell. I want to just
Yeah.
sell. I want to just tell people what I'm doing, and I want to talk about features, and I want to, here's what I'm doing and here's why I'm great. And then you realize nobody gives a shit about you and what you sell, and none of it. What they care about is the story, the journey, a humble approach. Like, you have to be, think of yourself of like, what actually do people want to learn from you, and what can you share that's valuable? Not, here's the problem I'm solving, go buy this thing, right? So
Yeah.
I think like there's always a strategy of like top of funnel, middle of funnel, bottom of funnel content that we can talk more about. But I want to talk about the algorithm on LinkedIn. Everyone's
Yeah.
talking about it. I'm in the influencer space. We built a marketplace for B2B influencers specifically on LinkedIn to begin with, and then expanded into newsletters, podcasts, YouTube, Twitter. But LinkedIn is still our core focus for a lot of our customers. Algorithms have changed a lot for good and for bad. What's your take? What are you seeing on the algorithm? What can you share with other people that they might not know?
I hate algorithm tactics, if I'm being transparent, and I hate it because it changes so much. And if you follow the algorithm month on month, 2 months ago you would have optimized for video, 3 months ago you would have optimized for carousels, and like you're switching the strategy. So my top level advice would be like pick your message, what you're trying to communicate, and then work your formats to try and find the best way to communicate that message. I think that's like the best top level is to ironically ignore the algorithm. What's working for me right now though, articles on LinkedIn I think are really underrated. I'm optimizing for depth, time spent with me, and then utility are the three things I'm optimizing for. Articles have the most impressions right now. They have the highest quality engagement in terms of the comments, and no one's using articles on LinkedIn. My videos are my worst performing piece of content. I still put out probably one a day. Generally, from the algorithm across our client base as well, we have 36 clients, probably 70 plus active profiles. Videos are performing the worst. Still, for me, I think it's a valuable piece of content for anyone to put out because it's time with me and you get the personality across. Carousels are still my, I think, first or second highest performing content format. I think that's really interesting to see. Is the simple factor with dwell time, right? Like, if I can keep someone on the carousel for 30, 45 seconds, LinkedIn wants people on the platform. My carousels are doing that. So the dwell time's there as well. A lot of people are talking about cheat sheets right now for saves and sends and optimizing for those metrics. I think they're great from a utility standpoint of like, if you can do cheat sheets that people find useful, they'll save and send it. For me personally, and across all clients, we haven't seen that translate yet. So carousels, articles are the post formats that are working best. Videos are working the worst. And still, as always, a big format is text and photo, which is ironic, but LinkedIn just loves text and photo format.
Right. Yeah. And also matching the photo with the hook is also very important, I believe. Something we're hearing on our side, which I'd love to get your take on,
Okay,
is
go for it.
we have activated 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 creators for a specific brand. They're building content flywheels with those creators. They're repurposing some of that content from time to time. We had a few companies come back to us being like, hey, the content that these creators are creating is now being indexed in LLMs. It's increasing the visibility of our brand. What's your take on that? Is that something you're hearing? Are you interested in that? What's your overall insight that you can share?
Yes, I think a study came out 3 weeks ago that said LinkedIn was the second highest cited site in LLMs behind like Reddit, I believe, which I think is really interesting. For me, it's not like a massive concern. Like if your primarily focus is SEO through LinkedIn, I don't think it's you probably approaching it in the wrong way necessarily. But it's like one of the added side benefits. Like once you look at the pros and cons of each platform, like there's probably the list of pros for LinkedIn compared to 90% of other platforms are just bonkers. Like the list would go on and on. I think that's another one that probably won't get enough attention over the next 6 months. But like is another side factor of like clearly like Google, the LLMs all see it as a reputable source of information. And that's also a showcase of who's on the platform and how valuable and how weighted that content can be from like
Hmm.
almost like a society perspective.
Yeah, you said articles, which got me thinking. Like, I am just launching a newsletter in 2 weeks from now. If anyone's watching this, it's probably live by now. And I realized there's long form content is really interesting and valuable. And we're creating articles for the website, posts for the newsletter. And then I realized, like, actually, LinkedIn articles could be a great way to use and repurpose that content. I think what a lot of people realize is, or don't realize, is that they haven't done this for long enough. That you actually repurpose the content. There's a number of valuable things that come from this. Number one, articulating yourself, clarity of thought. The written word really helps you think clearly and be able to explain yourself. Then there's the impressions and engagements and all of that good kind of, I suppose, ego boost that you get. And then there's the, oh, this is actually working because people are recognizing me in the sales cycle cycle. They're trusting me early, and I just think there's just so much benefits that happen from creating content. You can even repurpose the content into paid channels. You can do blog articles. You can create internal memos. You can add the content to lead magnets. There's just so many different things that you can do. Okay, so just to maybe finish off on something interesting for the audience, talk to us a little bit about paid channels. Are you guys doing any paid channels at the moment? Is that not a strategy? Is it anything that you plan to do in the future?
We have been toying up with the idea of doing more paid for forever and ever. We have a few clients who use paid. We know what works on LinkedIn right now are a mixture of thought leader ads with conversation ads. One thing I think is like a great insight for anyone to have on LinkedIn, especially from a B2B perspective, is LinkedIn is inherently a networking platform. So they built all their tools to optimize for conversations started. It's not a social media platform as you'd think with those types of tools as well. But yeah, so like one thing that's working is thought leadership ads and conversation ads. One thing that I say is for most companies is we call it the LinkedIn pyramid, but the first three layers of it are positioning, content, outreach. I think you should be able to do 2 to 3 million in sales, and we've kind of proved that with just those three layers. And I think if you're not doing 2 to 3 million a year in sales through LinkedIn already, you probably don't need to touch ads. I think you
Makes
can
sense.
access
Yeah.
it way more cost effectively in those three layers.
So I want to come back to something you shared earlier, and then I want to get to your YouTube channel and why you created it. But engagement, so and nurturing people who engage on the content.
Yeah.
What tools are you using to do that at the moment? How do you identify those people? And then how do you actually do the outreach? Is it manual? Is there anything that people should be aware of? Any tools you want to plug?
Yeah, I don't like to plug any specific tools. We have no partnerships, but like tools like Triggerfy, I think it's like Team Influence. You can track all your profile views and anyone who engages across your content. They're not like the most complex tools, quite easy to set up. And you can set it as a flow. So essentially you have a lead list of everyone who's engaged on your content. When you're doing the content that is around your niche, it's great for like intent triggers, like, and then you can target off the back of that.
I was going to come to your YouTube channel, so let's jump to that. I feel like I'm creating this podcast and we're publishing it on YouTube, but we're not creating content specifically for YouTube. Why did you start?
Like I said at the start, I think we're optimizing for depth, and I want people to spend as much time with me as possible. As the agency's grown, I've realized that like you talk about with B2B influencers, like I wouldn't class myself as anywhere close to an influencer, but I understand that the company will grow much quicker the more time that I can spend with people online, and I want more depth with that. So that's one thing we're doing with YouTube. I also think it's a really underrated channel if you put any effort into it. So there's a massive moat around YouTube where like I just recorded my second YouTube video that'll go live today. It's probably taken it'll take an editor that we pay thousands of pounds to edit. It takes hours and hours to do. We have a full camera setup. I'm in our pod studio now. There's like lighting over here from our setup. Like there's a massive moat around YouTube. I think it's really underrated for that. But our whole marketing strategy in general is like essentially founder led, use them as influencers. We want as much time with them as possible, as much influence as possible. And then traditional like B2B sales of like mopping up all the intent we can get and using that to drive revenue. I think it's a really underrated strategy of like almost like a Daniel Priestley who does it, who just like have a key person of influence in the industry, but then use like classic traditional techniques to drive revenue in. It's
I
like
love that.
it's a no-brainer. Last thing I'll say, David, I know we're running over, is one of my favorite people on the planet is Mitch, who runs Flawed in Manchester. I think they've leveraged LinkedIn better than anyone else I know in Manchester. It's small niche, but the irony of what they did is that they didn't actually think they were leveraging LinkedIn, but they have two decent personal brands, about 1,000 followers between the two founders, and they have a 8 person sales team. They've driven more revenue through LinkedIn than like 90% of people, purely because people know Flow because they have founder-led content, they have a brand, and they have a sales team starting contact. So many B2B companies do like cold, everything's cold. So it's like, hi, I'm John from this company. Have you ever heard of us? No. And that's where people fall flat.
Well, look, you're speaking to somebody that definitely invests a lot into founder-led content, and I'm constantly on my high horse telling people that they need to get involved and start to create content. And in the end of the day, especially at the early stages of a company, like you're looking for channels and leverage that are good return on investment. And once you start to create content, you realize
No
it's
brainer.
really good return on investment, especially if you're paying a ton on paid ads. You can actually just like reallocate some of that spend too. Okay, let's talk about future and then we'll wrap up. So where are we going? What are the trends you're excited about? B2B marketing, over the next 1 to 2 years, what do you think are some of the important trends and things that are going to happen over the next few years?
I think you've got to look at culture and then counterculture. I think it'll go in two directions. I think the first one is we see AI more social. We'll see LinkedIn flourish. We'll see B2B becoming way more across social channels, TikTok, Instagram, Twitter. All those channels will have a massive push from B2B perspective. People don't understand that 8% of the B2B market haven't even touched social media yet. So we'll have this massive push for more automation, more social, more modern. I think you'll have the counterculture to be going way more person to person. I think you'll see a lot of like ABM campaigns doing direct mail, sending stuff in the post, going for creative campaigns. I think both will work. I think the issue you'll have is people who get stuck in the middle, who don't really want to go down the modern route, don't want to push for socials, don't want to integrate automations, AI, but also don't want to get more traditional, shake hands, go creative, do in-person things. And I think that middle zone is exactly where you don't want to be. And we've actually tested both, but I'll let the future decide which one we end up on.
I love that. Okay, awesome. Well, thanks for joining. I feel like for the rest of the people like listening in on this, where can they find you? Where can they learn about you?
Niall Ratcliffe on LinkedIn is where you'll get most of it. Niall Ratcliffe on YouTube, and then www.notice.co for any agencies or if you need help with LinkedIn.
Thanks for listening. Don't forget to like and subscribe to Safe Doesn't Scale on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen. Limelight is the leading AI-powered B2B influencer marketplace and social signals platform. Brands like HubSpot, Webflow, and ZoomInfo use Limelight to power influencer programs at scale. Start your first campaign at limelighthq.com.